This is the Ford Mustang Mach-E, and I think Ford set out to do three things with this vehicle. Make it a Mustang, make it a crossover, and make it electric. And I think it's safe to say they've nailed it, and this is easily one of my favorite EVs on the market right now. First off, yes, this is a Mustang. When I first saw it, I didn't quite like the design, but I think that's grown on me a ton. I think it's got this aggressive, kind of sporty design that we typically don't see in vehicles like this. And personally, I think it's a lot better than some of the kind of generic boxy designs we see from some other crossovers in this body style. They've definitely taken a lot of cues from the gas Mustang. You can see that in the rear taillights as well as the headlights. Just a lot of it looks similar, just kind of a bigger, taller Mustang. But how does it drive? That's really the big question here, because it is a Mustang and you can't just put that badge on any car. It's got to have that muscle feel and that performance as well. I think Ford did a great job here. They really captured as much of the muscle feel as you can with an EV. Obviously, it's a little difficult because you don't have that engine in there, but it still has that wide stance and that muscle type of feel. You just sit up a little bit higher as well, being a crossover body. But the performance is really where it shines, and being an EV, they can really take advantage of that motor for some incredible performance that even outpaces some of the gas Mustangs, which is really impressive. And when you hit that pedal, it goes immediately. You don't have any lag like I felt in some other EVs. It truly does feel like a performance car. And I think the ride here is a good mix of sporty and luxury. You obviously don't have that same connection to the road you might have in a lower sitting sports car, but they didn't go all out with this really soft suspension where you're not feeling anything on the road. And size-wise, this is really solid. The cabin feels really comfortable. I had no problems fitting anywhere in the car. I did the back seat test, which is a mark for me, obviously, being a taller guy. Fitting in the back seat, I had plenty of room back there. Definitely everybody in the cabin is going to be comfortable in terms of space. And the biggest thing I noticed just driving around is how insulated the cabin is as well. So not only are the seats and stuff comfortable and the room comfortable, but just the quietness you get in the car is really impressive, and definitely a marked difference over the Model 3 I drive every day. And although this is kind of, a muscly, sportier car or sportier SUV, it's still really comfortable for long trips. I actually took this on a road trip to Indianapolis when I was testing it, and it was incredibly comfortable. Again, a lot more comfortable than my Model 3, just in the seats, in the cabin dampening, all of that stuff. Really comfortable ride. So it'll do well for, city driving where you want to use that performance and be zipping around, but highway driving as well while you're just going the same speed for miles on end. It's really comfortable for that. And if you haven't noticed already, in the interior, kind of the defining feature in the Mach-E and some other Ford EVs like the Lightning is that big vertical screen. So this is one of the few vehicles that still has a vertical screen, and I like some parts of this, others I didn't. I think the biggest thing is that when it's vertically, you don't need to turn your head all the way to the right to see the far end of the screen. But obviously then you have to look down to see some of the pieces at the bottom of the screen. So it's kind of personal preference here. I think either screen works. I think the UI here is really good. It's really thoughtfully put together. It's easy to use. I think the only weird thing here is the dial at the bottom. So this is only set up to control volume. You cannot control anything else with this dial at the bottom. And I find that a little bit odd because you're taking up a decent amount of screen real estate there by just having a volume dial that could have been off the screen or something like that. And personally, I ended up just using the steering wheel controls for volume instead of using that dial. So it is, nice for the passenger to use, but I find as the driver, I didn't use it that much. But other than that, pretty standard settings here. I thought this was really well laid out. Ford did a good job making this pretty easy to use so anybody can hop into the car and figure out what settings they need to change or find those settings that they might want to change. And that's definitely a marked difference over some other EVs. They did design this UI from the ground up. This wasn't converted from one of those gas cars, which I do appreciate. You've got some features like routing with EV charging that is built in, and you do have CarPlay and Android Auto if you do prefer using that. Some other notes on the interior here, you've obviously not only got the big vertical screen, but you also have a dash screen, which is pretty cool. I know I'm missing that sometimes in my Model 3. And one odd thing before I get into some of the features on here is this screen actually buzzed a lot. I'm not sure if this is a defect of this specific vehicle, but I noticed that dash screen buzzes pretty loudly. If you're not playing music or anything like that, you can definitely hear it. Otherwise, it's got all the basic driving information on there. It's got your speed, it's got some driving stats, all that stuff. But it also is where you see kind of your Blue Cruise information. So this is, Ford's version of autopilots. They're calling it Blue Cruise. And it is like a lot of other self-driving features on other cars. So you've got not only adaptive cruise control, so it's not going to run into the car in front of you, but it also has that lane keep assist. And I think the biggest difference on Blue Cruise compared to some others is that it actually has a hands-free mode. So when the screen lights up blue, that dash screen lights up blue, that means you can take your hands safely off the wheel. It is monitoring your eyes with those IR blasters right behind the steering wheel. And if it notices you looking off of the road, it's gonna alert you and tell you to get your hands back on the wheel. And now if we put on Blue Cruise here, since we're on the highway, it'll say Blue Cruise on the touchscreen, and it's just got the normal blue bubble right now, which means I have to keep my hands on the wheel. But we're about to get on this main highway right here, and we should be able to take our hands off the wheel. Could adjust our speed on the left here. So now if we put on Blue Cruise, since we are on a major highway, and since the screen lit up blue like that, we're now on hands-free. So you can take your hands off the wheel at this point. I obviously always want to be paying attention. And these IR blasters up here are tracking my eyes. So if I look away from the screen for too long, they're going to yell at me and basically say, hey, make sure you're watching the road. There we go. So if I'm looking away from the road, it'll give me that warning and say, hey, you need to be paying attention. But otherwise, Blue Cruise has been working awesome. It's very similar to autopilot. I've also noticed you can actually move in your lane a little bit more than with autopilot. You're not going to knock it out of Blue Cruise if you just shift a little bit to maybe get around a truck or something like that. It's going to then recenter you. It's not going to kick you out of Blue Cruise if you're trying to just kind of adjust a little bit, which I like. And then you can just press the single button to take you off of that. And we're back to manual driving at this point. But this worked really well. It was really solid around curves. I know that's usually a downfall of some of these systems, as curves are sometimes a struggle, but it worked really well here. And probably the biggest dislike I had here is just that it doesn't have any noise alerts, so you can't turn on any noise alerts. So if you have Blue Cruise activated and you go out or into Blue Cruise, there's no ding or chime or anything to let you know what mode you're in. You're kind of depending on looking at that dash screen to see if it's enabled or not. But other than that, I mean, it performed really well. Like I said, I took a long road trip to Indianapolis when I was testing and used Blue Cruise the entire time. Super helpful. I mean, it's right on par with a lot of those other self-driving systems, so no major complaints there. A couple other notes on just driving and the interior in general. There is a Bang & Olufsen sound system in here. This is incredible. Sounds really good in this cabin. Like I said, it's very well insulated, so really isolates the sound well, and music sounds great in here. And like a lot of other EVs, they actually utilize this sound system for some driving sounds. So there's a couple different drive modes you can go into, but in the sportier or aggressive mode, the unbridled mode, this is where you really feel that rumbling. So it uses the bass of that sound system to kind of rumble the cabin a little bit if that is something you're looking for in an EV. I know some people miss that sound switching from a gas vehicle. I know I personally like it quiet, but you do have the option to turn that on and off, so that's good. And that brings us to charging, and obviously being an EV, you've got to charge it up. So the charge port is located right near the driver's side door. I really like this location. It's easy to just hop out of your car, plug your vehicle in on that side of the car and go about your day or whatever business you're doing. For level 2 charging, you can do up to 11.5 kilowatts, so really standard level 2 charging there. So if you get a home unit or out in public, that's about the fastest you will get, and that easily will charge up the vehicle overnight. But for fast charging, you're getting at just above 150 kilowatts. So I saw a peak of around 156 when I tested it on an Electrify America station. And this is pretty good, not the quickest, but it does get the job done here. I think that's kind of the minimum standard anymore in an EV is around 150 kilowatts. Probably the biggest concern I had is that does taper really quickly. It doesn't sustain that high charging rate for very long. I noticed it tapered down to around 100 kilowatts at around 30 to 40%. So isn't sustaining that fast charging for very long, but you're still getting under that half-hour charge up time if you are on a road trip and just need a a quick juice up before you continue. And my biggest concern, with just charging in general is the car does not show you what kilowatts your car is pulling. Anytime you plug in, it's not going to show you, hey, you're charging at 150 kilowatts or anything like that. It will just say time remaining to charge up to your set charge limit, which is good and bad. I think that helps simplify things for people that aren't used to driving an EV. And I think the biggest reason they need to add something like this is I was charging at an Electrify America station, was plugged in, and I noticed that it was going to take like 2 hours to charge, and I thought that isn't right, but there's no way to see what output my car was receiving. It just said, hey, it's going to take this long. So if somebody plugs in, they might not be able to quickly diagnose what's going on with the station. So when I looked on the screen on the charger, it actually said it was only outputting like 30 kilowatts. So that was the problem there, but you're not able to see that information from the car screen, which I think is a bit odd. Fortunately, I was able to switch, plugged in at that new plug, and it ramped up to 150 kilowatts, and it then showed less time remaining to charge. Bit of an oversight from Ford there, but fortunately, that can be a software update. They can quickly update that if they want to add a feature like that. Another weird thing I noticed on charging on the level 2 side of things is to set your charge limit. So, with EVs, you don't necessarily always want to charge up to 100%. Setting your charge limit in this vehicle is incredibly difficult and really odd. You actually have to save a charging location in the screen and then set your charge limit at that specific charging location. So instead of just saying, hey, I want my limit at 90%, every time you set up a new charger, you have to add that charge limit and tie it to that charger, which I think is just a really odd system and really odd thing to do. I think just adding a simple charge limit indicator and maybe splitting it out by level 2 and level 3 or AC and DC charging, something like that, would be much preferred over tying that to an individual station. One more thing on charging, which I think is really exciting, is the Mach-E is actually equipped with plug and charge. So this is new technology coming to non-Tesla EVs where you don't need to swipe a credit card or tap an RFID card when you go up to a station. When you plug in the vehicle, it will actually recognize the car, recognize your payment information, and do that transaction automatically. And this is definitely the direction or the future of EV charging, is just no accounts, no anything. It's just plug in and get your charge going. You don't have to worry about anything else. So I tried this out at an Electrify America station, just walked up, plugged in the vehicle, it started processing, and the demo car was actually already linked with a Ford account that had payment on it and a credit of a certain amount of charging, and was able to use that automatically. So all of that was processed automatically. Easily the smoothest charging experience I've had outside of a Tesla vehicle. So really cool, and I'm hoping more vehicles add this because it'll just streamline a lot of things. But overall, this is a vehicle I recommend. If you are looking for your first EV, I don't think you can go wrong with the Mach-E. There are some quirks here and there, but nothing that is a deal breaker for this vehicle. And like I said, if you're looking for a Mustang, you're looking for one that is electric, I think this is about as close as you can get right now. But I do hope Ford eventually releases an actual muscle car that is electric. I'm waiting for the day that comes out. But for now, this is what we got. That'll do it for this review. Let me know what you think of this vehicle down in the comments. If either you're an owner or looking at this vehicle, I want to know your thoughts here. What did I miss here? What do you like about this vehicle? What do you dislike? Let me know down in the comments.